here come your reminders about what makes a good essay. You are going to write 5 paragraphs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First one. Let's do like some Dora the Explorer. What does the first paragraph do? You're right, it's your introduction. Cool. You are going to introduce your main idea in here. This is where you want to make sure that you give, like, I don't even know if you can read this. Maybe I need to make it bigger. The author, the title, some brief context, and then everything leads to your claim. Like, that is the biggest thing. What is your main idea that you're going to prove in this entire essay? So, like, you are going to explain, like, what your motif is and why it matters, right? One motif throughout the novel Sula is fire, and it matters because this, right? Don't get into, like, huge detail, but just, like, name the motif and then slightly maybe what you think it represents. So, yeah, we see fire a lot. What does that show me? Okay, you'll give me more examples of that. You'll unpack that later, but, like, introduce your main idea here. In a lot of your instructions, your introduction is also called a thesis paragraph. That's because, like, a thesis is another name for your claim, like your main idea, and so that's what that paragraph does. It introduces your thesis, introduces your claim, so it can be called any of those things. So that's the first thing. This should be one of your shorter paragraphs, right? You should not write a whole bunch of explanation on this. And then you're going to jump into your 3 different body paragraphs. I'm actually not going to write a lot for these because we're going to talk about them. Each of these body paragraphs, the job essentially is just to prove the claim. So if my claim is, Sula, the novel Sula shows that all people are more complex than they may at first seem. You can't steal that. It's also not that good, so don't steal that, okay? So if I'm trying to prove people are complex, Sula shows me that people are complex, then all 3 of these paragraphs are going to prove what? Yeah, you're right, that people are complex, okay? And you're going to do that in 3 different ways. You're going to say to me, like, number 1, people are complex because this. Number 2, people are complex because this. Number 3, people are complex because this. Here's where it's going to get a little trickier and a little different than last time. As you can see in Google Classroom, there are 4 different paragraph styles for body paragraphs. There's the summary, the extended example, the connected examples, and the literary analysis or literary element. I forget what I called that. You only need to write 3, which means you get to choose. You cannot do the same style of paragraph 3 times. So basically, like, you're going to do 3 out of those 4 options. You can choose based on which ones make the most sense, based on which ones are the easiest, based on which ones seem to fit. Like, if you're going to talk about a motif, then probably you're going to want to have that literary element paragraph in there. I'm going to get more into detail on that in a different video, but just remember that you're going to choose 3 out of the 4. You're going to follow the examples, and each one, the goal is just to prove your claim, right? So in a different way, by summarizing the plot, how does that prove that people are complex? By giving 1 example and really diving into it, how does that prove the plot? By giving 2 examples, one from the beginning, one from the end, how does that prove the claim? For the literary analysis one, how does finding this, like, 1 literary element, this 1 motif, how does that prove what you introduce up here? I hope that kind of makes sense. That's the goal of those. And then finally, in your conclusion, that's your, I should have asked. Okay, wait, pause. What's your last paragraph called? Conclusion. Good job, you're so smart. In your conclusion, your job is basically to wrap things up, maybe apply it to the real world, right? So this is where, like, you want to be insightful, you want to be thoughtful. You don't just want to repeat yourself. Like, you do want to remind, again, everything comes back to the claim. So you want to remind your reader, clearly, Sula is a novel about how people are complex. And then maybe this is your chance to, like, apply it to their real world, right? Like, we know that a good theme, a good lesson applies to the book. It also applies to the real world. So your conclusion is where you could talk about how, like, yeah, like, actually people are complex. Or, yeah, actually, like, I don't know, this idea, this topic, whatever, this thing that I showed up here actually matters. You can give real life examples. You can give personal examples, all those things. Throughout the entire paper, even in the conclusion where you're maybe being personal, you want to try to avoid I, so you're going to say everything is a fact. So even if you think it's an opinion, even if you're not sure that it's real in the real world, you're going to say it like a fact. That's the overview of what a paper does. I think you know those things.